Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. So, our lecture today is titled, the negative, that is the impact of climate change on Africa's development. The impact of climate change on Africa's development. Now, climate change is the change in average weather conditions. It is caused by the depletion of the ozone layer as a result of greenhouse emission and other things that pollute the atmosphere, like carbon dioxide from fossil fuel, burning power plants, and of course, burning of gasoline. Okay, according to the United Nations, climate change is attributed directly or indirectly to human activities that alters the composition of the atmosphere, and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. Okay, now the problem and prospects of climate change can actually be seen from the perspective, that it varies from, it varies across the continent, with some areas like East Africa getting wetter, but much of Southern Africa, West, Central, and North Africa getting drier and hotter. Now, crop yields are directly affected as the frequency of extreme weather events increases. Okay? Okay, so now let us look at the negative impact of climate change. What are the negative impact of climate change? Now, the first impact of climate change that we're going to be looking at, which is actually from the negative perspective, is that of agriculture. Now, while water is essential for plant growth, all agricultural, you know, all agricultural, of course, activities depend also on steady water supplies and change. Okay, and change is likely to disrupt those supplies through, floods and droughts. Now, agriculture can also be disrupted by wildfires and, of course, changes in seasons, which is already taking place. Okay, leading to herdsmen fighting in several, parts of Africa. Okay, herdsmen fighting, of course, the crop farmers in several parts of Africa. Okay, so number two is in health sector. Now, due to heat waves, the vulnerable groups, will be highly affected, leading to deaths of several people, okay, within the African society. Of course, because of the heat waves. Okay, you know, the heat waves is actually causing a lot of health hazards to several aspects of the population of the African society, particularly the vulnerable groups. Okay, number three impact is the impact on environment, that is environmental degradation. Now, increase okay increased incidences, of greenhouse emission, contaminates the environment, leading to the pollution of the environment and others, like, gully erosion and desertification. All of these are actually caused by climate change. Another negative impact of climate change is poverty. Now, because agricultural production is affected, okay, water and other economic activities are also affected, and all of these things will actually lead to what? To poverty. Okay, so the natural resources, the environment, that actually are readily available for agricultural activities are being affected by the impact of climate change. And all of that leads to, to poverty. Another another impact, negative impact of climate change is actually desertification. Of course, this can be found in almost all African countries, especially the North African countries. Now, this encroachment of desertification is actually one thing that has affected the agricultural sector, the animal husbandry, and of course, food production within the African society. All of these, are actually caused because of the impact of climate change on the environment, particularly in the area of desertification. Now, the next negative impact is called insecurity and political instability. Now, decreasing availability of resources actually leads to intensified competition, and for the resources, which leads to insecurity and political instability. Now, the depletion of the ozone layer, and of course, climate change actually affects, okay, the natural resources, and because the natural resources are actually affected and depleted, the struggle for these natural resources will become very intense, and the intensity of this struggle actually leads to insecurity. Okay, so those are just the major things. The next one is sea level rise. Now, the sea level rise is actually causing flooding, and as well as causing contamination to several parts of Africa's soil, and all of these actually affect agricultural production as well as the environment. Okay, now what are the positive impact of climate change to the African society? Number one, one of the positive impact is that all African countries have already prepared their national adaptation program of action. Now, this policy is either on ground or are in the offing. Okay, so one of the negative impact of climate change is actually, the formulation and implementation of, extant policies that will ward off the impact of this climate change. Okay, so that is actually number one. Number two is that African countries, through MDGs and SDGs programs, are now looking the way of environmental sustainability. Of course, a lot of programs, a lot of policies and programs have been put in place to ensure environmental sustainability. Number three is that the meteorological predictions over the years have helped to predict the weather, which is helping people in several African countries. Of course, meteorological agencies, have actually predicted over time. They have actually been involved in prediction, weather prediction, and this has actually helped most of the African countries. Now, if not because of climate change, all of these things wouldn't have been in place. And if they are not in place, of course, the impact of the climate change would have actually been more on the African societies. Now, number four is early warning mechanism should be, have been put in place, to cushion the effect of climate change. If not because of this climate change, and of course weather condition that are that is actually becoming very unbearable, a lot of African countries do not actually have any early warning mechanism. So the positive impact is that early warning mechanisms are being put in place to ensure that the impact of this climate change is not actually too much on the people. Okay, the next one is building of cattle ranches. Now, don't forget that, of course, the impact of climate change is, on the environment, is that it has caused desertification. By implication, in several African countries, the herders do not actually have grazing environment again, particularly those residing in the northern part of Africa, there is no grazing routes for them, and so it is now forcing African government to actually start thinking of building ranches, for cattle or for livestock. Okay, so thank you very much.